if they can get disclosure done this summer, which would follow hearings pretty quickly. I think 2 weeks of hearings. I know the witnesses are going to testify. It's going to blow people's minds. The members of the Congress, their eyes are going to be a size of saucers. And it sets the stage for the president to go, hey, looks clear to me.
Chris Lehto, welcome to Lehto Files. That was Steve Bassett on That UFO podcast. He's talking with Andy. Check out the full interview, link in the description. Welcome to Lehto Files. Thank you for being here. I'm Chris Lehto. Steve Bassett has been a proponent for disclosure since 1996. This is from IMDb. Stephen Bassett, his nickname is Steve. His height is 5'9". Those are the two options. That's the overview. So the mini bio, Stephen Bassett is the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. He has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of disclosure, with a capital D, he says, the formal confirmation by heads of state of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. In 2013, Paradigm Research Group organized a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington. In November 2014, PRG launched two political initiatives in Washington, D.C. One sought the first hearings on Capitol Hill since 1968 regarding the extraterrestrial presence issue. The other sought to inject the ET issue into the 2016 presidential campaign. Bassett's argument is that disclosure is happening. It hasn't happened yet, but the disclosure with a capital D, that will be the President of the United States and other heads of nations coming on TV, online, and telling their citizens that, yes, there is a non-human intelligence here on Earth. So it's already here. It's been here for many years, and they have known about it. At least parts of the government have known about it. To me, that is disclosure with a capital D. Steve Bassett here thinks that will happen very soon, within the next 2 years at the longest, he says, and potentially this summer. Think about that. So this is an article from Paradigm Research Group. Again, link in the description, from April 14, 2023, media release, Nothing Lasts Forever, Not Even Truth Embargoes. He says the reason was to defend national security. Over the past 25 years, I have sent thousands of emails to national and international media drawing their attention to the following from Steve Bassett. Number one, there is a non-human piloted and or controlled technology engaging our world. So an extraterrestrial presence is here. Non-human intelligence, NHI. Number two, this presence and a host of related phenomena have enormous implications for the human race. Okay, yes, I would agree with that. Number three, the U.S. government has known of this presence since no later than 1947. Okay, the earliest date I've seen is 1945 for the Trinity event. Jacques Vallée has written about that with Paula Harris. Number four, the U.S. government, with direct compliance from its allies and indirect compliance from its adversaries, embargoed this profound information from its citizens in service to national security, the truth embargo. So this is interesting right here. Number four, so the U.S. government, with direct compliance from its allies, that's quite interesting, and indirect compliance from its adversaries, because you're not going to talk to them directly, but you will get indirect compliance. This from its allies, okay, I have seen this compliance with allies from NATO in the 60s. I have seen interviews with old NATO officers, right, lieutenant colonels, etc., who have said that there was this sort of agreement, extraterrestrials. After Eisenhower, they did have meetings, and then in the 60s, basically they determined that they were not going to release this to the public. To highlight that, check out this amazing interview I saw on Eyes on Cinema. This is what I think Steve Bassett is referring to. Is this a reality?
I was assigned to SHAPE headquarters in 1963. My first assignment there was with the Operations Division, and I learned of a study in progress, a high classification, cosmic top secret study that had been initiated in 1961 to determine whether there was a threat to Allied military forces in Europe. The study was called for because during the early 1960s, even in the late 1950s, there were incidents involving high-altitude flyovers of large circular metallic machines flying in formation at a very high altitude at a very high rate of speed. over Central Europe. We learned at the time that the Soviets thought they belonged to us, and we thought they belonged to the Soviets. And we and the Soviets had almost gone to war several times over these objects. Cosmic Top Secret is the highest security classification that the NATO SHAPE headquarters has. I believe they still have that classification level. It's the very highest level. It's above top secret. Well, Air Marshal Sir Thomas Pike initiated the study. It took 3 years. The conclusions were rather mind-boggling. The senior military officers in SHAPE headquarters were stunned by the conclusions of the study, which was called the assessment. The conclusions were...
That was the amazing account by retired U.S. Army Sergeant Major named Robert O. Dean. So this is from shape.nato.int. It shapes answer back to this. The truth about an alleged 1960s report by SHAPE on the threat posed by UFOs? Question mark. Over the years, Historical Office has been asked many times for a copy of an alleged top-secret report by SHAPE from the 1960s assessing the threat posed by UFOs and NATO. SHAPE is the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe. SHAPE. It sounds like straight out of a Marvel movie, doesn't it? The Supreme Allied Leader is the 4-star. It was General Fogelnuts back in the day. I have a video about that guy. The command headquarters, known as Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, or SHAPE, is located in Belgium. The mission of ACO and the Saucer is to contribute to preserving the peace, security, and territorial integrity of NATO member nations in its area of responsibility. So, they say, the assessment. Robert O. Dean has frequently claimed in speeches and internet postings that while stationed in SHAPE in the mid-1960s, he read a highly classified document with the title The Assessment, an evaluation of a possible threat to NATO forces in Europe, which he discussed in that video right there. It studied all aspects of UFOs and their potential threat to NATO. So what they say is, we've analyzed these claims in detail. So we looked, including a photograph alleged to be of the front cover of the assessment. We saw that photo, and we've included the cover page as a forgery, and that SHAPE prepared no report on UFOs during the 1960s. So they looked. They found a report that was in there, and it looked fake, and they said, nothing happened. I wonder if that's all they did, you know? Did they do anything else? My guess is no. While some will no doubt dismiss this conclusion as part of some sort of long-standing cover-up of the existence of UFOs, well, that could easily be what it would look like. We would like to point out that in the 1960s, like today, SHAPE was confronted by much more pressing threats than UFOs and did not have the time and resources to spend 2.5 years studying them. As Sergeant Major Dean alleges, we are not saying that UFOs do or do not exist, but simply that SHAPE did not prepare a report on them. More information, Supreme Headquarters Allied Europe. Search our content. Let's see. UFO. 0. Okay, UFO. Let's try UFO. UFO. Oh, there's nothing. Okay, nothing. I mean, there's nothing in here about UFOs, right? Yeah, there's nothing in here about UFOs, so what are they talking about? All right, back to Stephen Bassett, or Steve. Back to Steve Bassett. That's the conspiracy theory, if you will. But again, Twitter files showed a lot of conspiracy theories actually are true. And the word conspiracy theory was invented by the CIA, which, by the way, has actually done a lot of these theories that turned out not to be conspiracies. So he calls it the truth embargo, and he says it was done in the service of national security, which I think could easily be true. Number 5, the truth embargo is no longer appropriate policy and is now a threat to national security. I would believe that as well. I argue it is a threat to national security. If anything, having no transparency with our government, right? If the citizens of your nation cannot trust the government to actually tell them what needs to be told, tell them the truth in that instance about the greater universe around, they will have an issue, right? There is a serious threat to national security. You can worry about guns all you want, but what is the biggest threat to national security right now in America? Internal politics. This is your issue, national security. Okay, so it does matter. National security isn't always about other nations attacking you. Okay, it can be from inside the country, falling apart because you lied to your citizens for too many years. What do you expect? What do you think is going to happen? Because number 6, nothing lasts forever, and the truth embargo will end. with or without the level of investigative journalism they continue to withhold. So with or without, the truth embargo is going to end. I think this has been one reason they haven't released the information. If you imagine you do have top secret information about the greater universe, okay, let's say you have credible proof, actual evidence that we are surrounded by life, the universe is full of life, and there are actually NHIs all over the place, including here at our planet. Okay. If that's the reality, if that's the truth, sooner or later, the humans on the planet, hopefully, will find out about this fact, right? Sooner or later. So you can use this. Leaders of our countries can use this as an excuse to not share the information. Because if it's a reality, then the people will find out sooner or later, right? Maybe not these people. Okay, it has been 76 years, but maybe their great grandkids will find out, because sooner or later it will be released. It has to be released because it's a reality of the universe, right? But they can make the excuse that it doesn't have to be us that releases the information. Why don't these people just find out for themselves? Sooner or later, the people of Earth will realize that we are surrounded by non-human intelligence. Why would the governments of the world have to tell them, right? If you're the only nation that actually knows it to a fact, right, the leaders of these allies, then why would you release that to your adversaries or to anyone else? You keep the information secret. Now you can take advantage of all those benefits, right? Knowing information is power. So that's why they wouldn't tell anybody. Steve Bassett's point is that it is going to come out. It's going to come out sooner rather than later, because this information is the most volatile, important information humanity has ever received, right? That we are not alone, that we actually have non-human intelligence here. It's not even that it's far away. It's actually here on Earth. And it's been here for many years. Steve seems optimistic that this information will be released, that the government will actually release it. I'm not as optimistic, actually. I don't think the information can be released by the government. If it hasn't happened in 76 years, why would this be different? He does seem to think that this time is different. Let's check it out.
In the last couple of weeks and months, because of what they see on the mainstream news, what they see on social media, listening to podcasts, reading blogs, all of that kind of stuff as well. And they are hearing that there's going to be witnesses coming forward. They might hear whistleblowers. You say what they're witnesses, okay? That's fine.
Witnesses.
So I would ask you, can you tell someone new to this topic or who is still unsure what needs to be said or needs to happen in those hearings that hasn't happened already? And to give you an example, we have seen David Faver sitting on 60 Minutes with Alex Dietrich talking about the Nimitz-Princeton event, and we've seen Ryan Graves talk about what he's seen. So some very credible people have talked about some incredible things, and it still didn't cause, disclosure. Not that that necessarily would, but what big thing's going to happen at these hearings that is really going to change the president's mind?
Well, you're going to hear a good deal of the testimony, which will come from military witnesses. I mean, it's going to be military witnesses, possibly some civilian contractors, like a Steve Justice maybe, but what military witnesses? Because this is being approached from the standpoint of national security implications, which is great. Fine. It does have national security implications and is totally appropriate to look at it that way. It's not all that's going on, but that is a comfortable and safe political way to approach this. Fine. What we're going to hear is a lot of what we already know, except we're going to hear it in a hearing by witnesses under oath. All right? Lying, meaning a penalty, perjury. Right? And we're going to, there will be some classified, I'm sure, testimony that will take place, but most of the testimony is going to be on camera, being watched by people all around the world. That's the difference. All right. So if you got 100 or 200 million people watching Bob Salas talk about the shutting down of nuclear missiles, that's not the same thing as Bob giving a press conference with Robert Hastings in 2010 that the press came to and then walked away and didn't do much. This is showtime. All right. The curtain is going up on a huge stage. The audience is massive. All right. And so it's not that there's something else that's going to suddenly turn up, and that may be the case, that will go, oh, you said that happened. Well, then, hey, we got to have this question. All they have to do is simply say under oath what we've already been hearing in various ways for years and years and years. That and that is the reason why for since 1968, every effort to get a hearing in Congress on this issue has been blocked. Period. And what's that? 55 years. Okay. People say, oh, no. We've had 2 hearings now. No, we haven't. Bray and Moultrie came up to give a briefing to Andre Carson's committee on progress with respect to the original program. They didn't take an oath, I believe, pretty sure. Could be wrong, but I don't think they did. Didn't need to. Kirkpatrick came and gave information to Gillibrand. And I don't think he took an oath. And even if Moultrie and Bray did take an oath, then I'm going to check up on that. Again, that's not a hearing, really. It was a briefing. Questions were asked. What do you know? And so forth. So the last hearing we had that was a true hearing was 68. So the hearings that are coming will be really the first since then. And I think the 68 hearing, there were 4 witnesses and some outside testimony. There will be perhaps dozens in the hearings that are coming. All right. And so it's what we have been trying to get for 55 years is finally going to happen. That's a long time.
I have to agree with Steve. Those weren't hearings, what we've had so far. Those were comical kind of briefings. Kirkpatrick did release a lot of information. He did release information, but again, he's totally putting his head in the sand for a lot of these military witnesses. Okay. And like Steve mentions, we've heard many of the testimonies. Okay. David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, Ryan Graves. I mean, what else do you guys need? Gary Voorhees, Kevin Day. Steve mentions 24 witnesses. 24 witnesses. That was also mentioned in the last hearing, if you will, with Kirsten Gillibrand. That was with Dr. Kirkpatrick, led by Kirsten Gillibrand. She is a very powerful senator and has presidential aspirations. She has actually run for president in the past and could run again. And imagine that. Gillibrand's office wrote much of the NDAA 2022, and I'm guessing 2023 wording. So she's contributed a huge amount to this and is following up with Dr. Kirkpatrick, asking, why haven't the witnesses been heard? What about the sign-up sheet? There should be a process of actually taking the witness accounts and actually investigating them. Okay. And that has been delayed. Kirsten Gillibrand, she brought that up with Dr. Kirkpatrick. That was quite interesting. So she is a very powerful member. Congress is mobilized. They are engaged. And the American people want to hear it. Citizens want to hear it. We're tired of being told that we're crazy. We're tired of hearing that these hundreds and thousands of stories of people with nothing to gain, right? Only really ridicule, essentially. Sharing their stories now are going to be listened to, at least. There will be a method to actually give those testimonies to the government through Arrow. Okay, that right now that doesn't exist. That process doesn't exist. But according to Kirkpatrick, it is going to exist. And more importantly, those 24 witnesses could be speaking up. And so I'd like to get people a little prepared for what could possibly happen. Okay. There's a reason they don't want to bring this stuff up. And one of those reasons is human effects. Human effects. This is from that same article, press release, April 14, 2023, released by Steve Bassett. And if we scroll down here, he mentions there's 3 articles that are quite important. This is the first one, okay? So this is from Christopher Green, from 11 March 2010, Defense Intelligence Reference Document. So this is one of the DIRDs, right? The DIRDs, one of the 37 DIRDs out of OSAP program. I'm guessing that is related to this in some way, okay? Because Putov's on it. But anomalous acute and subacute field effects on human biological tissues. Look at that. Okay, so let's check this out quickly. So if we click on it here, it brings you to Mail Online. This is an actual Daily Mail article. Okay, I'll just cover the main points of this article. Quite interesting. This is from 7 April 2022 in the Daily Mail by Josh Boswell. Exclusive. This is from an interview with Christopher Green. They woke up burned and injured. Top brain expert and ex-CIA officer reveals hundreds of military servicemen suffered brain damage or symptoms of the mysterious Havana syndrome and even death after encountering UFOs. Okay, so as you can guess, this is a very inflammatory article. Okay, obviously, talking about human effects. So, forensic neuroimaging expert Christopher Green, Kit Green, says he has dealt with hundreds of patients who were injured or died after interacting with UFOs. Okay. I'm the go-to physician in the Department of Defense for unexplained morbidity and mortality, he told the dailymail.com in an exclusive interview. I do look at injuries and mortality from unidentified UAPs, so unidentified aerial phenomena, he added. Green, a professor at the Wayne State School of Medicine in Detroit, was in 2010 commissioned to write a paper by a secret $22 million defense program. So if you recognize that number, $22 million, that comes from ATIP, OSAP. However they did the funding, $22 million was appropriated for investigating this stuff. I've also seen people going into the paperwork, okay, normal citizens going into the government paperwork, all this and noting discrepancies. I would say that the bureaucracies are messy, okay? Who knows how this program was actually laid out? I don't think this program was highly advertised, is what I mean, okay? I bet most people in the government did not know about it. Green described symptoms of multiple sclerosis, brain damage, and burns among patients from close encounters of the third and fourth kind events. So third and fourth kind events. He said symptoms of many of these cases were similar to Havana syndrome, a mysterious illness affecting diplomats and U.S. officials in embassies around the world. Green said many of his patients experienced burns and brain damage and that around 1 in 10 died within 7 years of their reported encounter. Okay, so it's going to get messy, right? Because I don't know how cleanly this was done, okay? I know one of these people, Chris Bartell, okay? He gave his medical records to Kit Green. He was ordered to, from what he told me, ordered to give his medical records to Kit Green, basically just as he drove up in his car, he handed him through a window, and he never heard or saw anything again from that. So what was his analysis? Should people like Chris Bartell, who worked for the government, were in these areas, we saw a strange UFO, should they be concerned now? Are they going to be scared that they're going to have crazy brain damage? Or 1 in 10 people dying within 7 years of their reported encounter? Also, an interesting point I learned from this is if you think about it, you can reverse engineer from human effects. We're able to actually reverse engineer if you consider it. So in this article, you can go here. This is actual paper, an unclassified version of Dr. Green's paper titled Clinical Medical Acute and Subacute Field Effects on Human Dermal and Neurological Tissues. Let's check that out. So this is a medical report here. So here it is, right? Earth Tech International, Institute for Advanced Studies at Austin. So interesting. Clinical Medical Acute and Subacute Field Effects on Human Dermal and Neurological Tissues. So basically, human effects on skin, etc. If you want to check out the full study, link is in the description. But let's look at the preface here. As an example of the breadth of the study, certain characteristics of the fields associated with exotic propulsion can, with near certainty, be gleaned from archival records of their effects on human physiology. Okay, so quite interesting there. Let me say that again. So as an example, the breadth of the study, certain characteristics of the fields associated with exotic propulsion can with near certainty be gleaned from archival records of their effects on human physiology. This means we can get certain characteristics of the fields from these UFOs, from these, whatever you call them, spaceships, etc. So that means we can figure out certain characteristics with near certainty of these exotic propulsion methods. Okay, basically, what are they shooting out? How are they working? Right? Where can we actually get evidence is we can get evidence from their effects on human physiology. So think of that. Even if you don't have any actual material, if you don't have any UFO or UAP material, exotic materials, even if you don't have video evidence or camera evidence, you do have evidence of their effects on human tissues, okay? Quite interesting. So they move on further to say, hypothesis 1. So their intention is to basically extrapolate, to explicate the coupling mechanisms for communication to human tissue possible in the context of traditional physics or exogenic sources, with as unknown signal generation and focusing. This is an important point too. The pilot project proposed does not require that the coupled physics be explained, only modeled. So this is their hypothesis that they're looking at. Sufficient evidence exists from human injury effects to reverse engineer certain aspects of the energy propulsion systems. Look at that. So that's it. So basically, if you look at the evidence of human effects, now you can reverse engineer how it works. What is the actual system being used? Hypothesis A, case literature of anomalous contact event 3-5 events contain human injury data and is robust enough so that, okay, so this is their hypothesis. B, the injury patterns are scalable and self-consistent, okay, so that they can note statistical issues or statistical relationships that would lead to hypothesis C. They can permit reasonable descriptions as to the cause and effect, the bandwidth of energies, and acute versus subacute injuries. So that's their hypothesis, is that they are able to reverse engineer some parts of this propulsion system. Okay, and then we'll go through the executive summary here. This paper relates, summarizes, and analyzes evidence of unintended injury to human observers. Second, an argument is made that subsequent work can inform, reverse engineer, through clinical diagnosis, certain physical characteristics of possible future advanced aerospace systems from unknown provenance that may be a threat to the United States. The evidence discussed includes scientific material that has been peer-reviewed, contained in recently declassified government documents, and daily emergent clinical medical analysis also underway in companion research studies supported by the sponsor affiliates. This, according to Kit Green, based on historical cases, humans have been found to have been injured from exposures to anomalous vehicles, especially airborne, and when in relatively close proximity. The primary mechanisms for injury are related to electromagnetic radiation field effects. So these are EMR effects. EMF, electromagnetic radiation. The biophysical characteristics of their injuries are well understood. So interesting. So they're seeing radiation effects. The energy-related propulsion systems are not well understood. From what I can tell in this paper is that the radiation damage to skin neurological effects is well understood. But it sounds like the power is just so high. It's just crazy high. They're talking about megawatts per square centimeter. You're talking about gigawatts of energy. You know, that is a lot of energy dispersed. Okay. And it seems like we should see that. So why are we seeing health effects of these intense amounts of energy, and yet we can't pick up what are actually the energy? You know, what is it that's causing it? What's causing the effects? The potential deployment of systems is thus important to understand. Okay, so the energy-related propulsion systems, not understood. Sufficient incidents, accidents have been accurately reported. Okay, and medical data acquired as to support a hypothesis that some advanced systems are already deployed and opaque to full U.S. intelligence understanding. Okay, again, it's just from one guy, that is Kit Green, but what he says is there is sufficient incidents. There is enough medical data that has been found to support this hypothesis, to support it. That was in 2010. I doubt we've learned less since then. Amongst the most important pathophysiological effects are heating and burn injuries. Okay, so ionizing and non-ionizing, thermally induced, so from heat induced, and ionizing and non-ionizing. Neurological effects, so this is cognitive, central nervous system, neuromuscular, central autonomous system, sensory, and neuropsychiatric, neuroendocrine. Finally, we have auditory, cranial nerves 7 and 8, communication disabling effects, noise, and central neurocognitive. So these are the most important effects that they're noticing. Analysis of clinical diagnostic codes together with environmental conditions observed during anomalous events are clustered in meaningful ways. Quite interesting. Okay, and finally, the medical analysis, while not requiring the invention of an alternate biophysics, do indicate the use of, to us at least, unconventional and advanced energy systems. So these, just the author is Christopher Green. So very interesting paper there that Steve Bassett basically referenced.
But it's crazy when something is going on and people are doing something and you know that they already know something else. And it's, call it hypocrisy, call it cognitive dissonance. It just kind of drives you nuts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When a politician gets up there and rails about somebody having an affair, and it's known that that person has had an affair, it just drives you crazy, doesn't it? That's nature. All right. That's just human nature. Okay. I think I need to chill more. I know that the SETI program will be reviewed extensively, and people kind of want, did anybody in the SETI program know they were already here already, or other programs will be viewed that way. And they'll have various responses to that. Ultimately, everybody will use the national security argument, meaning I did this, I didn't say that. National security, national security, national security. I get it. National security justifies a whole lot of stuff far worse than being not having to be mendacious about what you know on the ET issue. So, again, try to be cool.
Well, Stephen, as we wrap up, because you've been very generous with your time, I normally finish with some listener questions, but I want to ask you about a couple of questions you might have. Blue sky thinking, we get that confirmation day this summer, and Joe Biden comes to you and says, Stephen, your work over the last few decades hasn't gone unnoticed, some incredible work. And I just want to give you first dibs on a couple of questions. What does Stephen Bassett want to know first? Have you got one, maybe two questions that right at the top of your head you would need to get the answer to, if you could get it there and then?
Well, look, these are the key things that I think most people will want to know. First of all, I want to know whether there is technology sequestered within the United States government's facilities and or contractor facilities, which could be of great help to the human race in dealing with its mounting problems, that is sequestered because the truth embargo would be jeopardized if it was put into use. Okay. In other words, it'd be great if we could give this to you guys, but we can't, because if we did, you kind of know that the ETs are here and that's still the embargo, right? So that's one of the key questions. Another question is, does the government have any formal relationship with these ETs already? Has there been any formal relations, any deals struck, whatever treaties? I don't think so, but that's a good question. Have you done that? All right. Another question is, have you been involved in the contact world? In other words, have you in any way, how would you say, created scenarios to stimulate contact with citizens of the country in order to get information, which would be unpleasant. But I want to know that. And by the way, doesn't mean that this is day one questions. These are the questions but I understand that you're not going to necessarily ask that question on day one, day two, but these are the three things that I'd like to know about. And the rest of those are three near the top. But the key questions I want is for the ETs themselves. In other words, my question, my thing would be, okay, here's what I'd like you to ask the ETs if there's open contact in 2 years, Mr. President, right? Mm-hmm. One, how long have they been engaging the planet? Is the ancient contacts that seem clearly to have happened? And how much information can we get about the way we've been engaged in the past and so forth? Two, of course, I think I know the answer, but why did you turn off our nuclear weapons in repeated instances? Right? What was the point of that? And why the crop circles? Kind of curious to know that. Why the crop circles? And what did you do with all the cow's blood? Kind of like to ask that question too. Kind of curious about that. And then ultimately, again, these are questions that are going to have to be asked with ETs, I think, and this would be open contact. And by the way, these are tough questions. In other words, if I'm the ETs and I'm going to, in this post-disclosure world, and we're going to do open contact, I would be hiring a public relations firm myself. I would, get one of the top firms, maybe in every major country, because they got some tough questions to answer as well.
That was some interesting questions there. I actually hadn't heard the third question, but that will undoubtedly come up if you look at Richard Dodie. If you look at the CIA, the U.S. government has done a lot of sketchy things. Look at Bob Jacobs. Small factions inside the government have done some pretty evil things. in the name of national security. If you look back at it, think of Richard Dodie. Dodie was an Air Force OSI agent who his job was to add disinformation into the UFO community to hide U.S. secrets. This could easily be going on in the present. There is evidence that that happened. So why couldn't it be happening now? Steve Bassett saying, could you have faked, if you will, UFO events, right? Could you go to another country, into Russia, kidnap somebody, drug them, make them think they're having a UFO experience? Maybe they believe in aliens already. Could you use this as a way to actually get information? I think that's what Steve Bassett is saying. And of our own citizens. Again, reference Richard Dodie, Air Force OSI, paid to actually provide disinformation into the U.S. public citizenry. I mean, that's pretty evil shit if you think about it. Ruined people's lives. Look at Bob Jacobs; he was hassled. So there's a dirty underlying there. You're looking at human effects, actually figuring out human effects, using it as a reverse engineering program. So could you be interviewing these people with the intent of helping them, but your actual real goal, your true goal, is just to find out more information to actually reverse engineer these type of events to get better data so you can build your own systems. I recommend you guys check out that full interview. Check out That UFO podcast with Andy. Great show. Blockbuster stuff coming this summer. I just can't believe it. I mean, the hearings. I've only been in this game for a little over 2 years now. And the UFO, I can't imagine you guys that have been here for decades. People like Steve Bassett, been in the grind since 1996. And you see here now, he just seems so professional. He seems very poised. I guess 27 years of just grinding gives you a wider perspective. But I would check that out. He's very confident that we will have hearings. He's confident that this information will come out. And he's highly confident that the U.S. government does have advanced knowledge of non-human intelligence on Earth. I mean, think of that. Just amazing stuff. Personally, I still don't think it's going to come from the government. It's great. Glad to see all this optimism. Glad to see us providing pressure. We should certainly be providing pressure. But my point is, it hasn't come from the government. I see no reason why they would give up this information. There's no benefit to them. The benefit is to humans and humanity. That does not have the word America or France in it. I just named those countries in particular off the top of my head, but all the other countries out there. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think disclosure is going to happen this summer? Do you think end of June? Sounds like June, July is when we're going to have the hearing. Could you imagine 2 weeks? Does anyone remember the 1968 hearings? Do you guys remember those hearings? Never heard of those hearings. I have to research those now, the 1968 hearings. But we haven't had any hearings yet. It's just, I have UFO hearings on my YouTube videos, but watching them, I agree with Steve Bassett. Those are not hearings. Those are briefings by insiders, essentially, people in charge of those programs. Definitely not hearings. Wait till we get Mario Woods up there, Bob Salas, Jacob, Ryan Graves, David Fravor. There's just hundreds of military witnesses. How are you going to just brush this under the rug? How are you going to say it's just not happening when we have so many witnesses and you have actual data? There is data coming out. I just showed that paper from the human effects. Did they just make up all those effects? Did those effects come out of nowhere? Is it just one crazy guy? This guy, Chris Green, he's just this crazy doctor running around with Lou Elizondo at OSAP. It's just this small group of people, even though it goes worldwide. We see cases all over the world. Man, amazing stuff. I'm super excited. Thank you for being here. Watching and liking is a huge support to the channel. Please subscribe to get notifications of future videos, and then support the channel at patreon.com/Chris Lehto. Get backstage access. If you're into Web3 technology, UAP Societies are Web3 UFO hunting company. We're using NFT funded research to go after UAPs. Why? Because nothing else has worked in the last 76 years. And unlike all the optimism going on, I think we should find our own data. Stop relying on the government to not give us handouts. We just get our own data. let them try and stop us. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a great day. Peace.